Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. All things Middle Earth here with some starting commander builds for Khaldoon and Gorbag. If you're playing in the new settlement style selection, you will get Gorbag and Khaldoon to start out in your season 1 if you start in the Morgul Orc style or the Easterling style. You can kind of reference it based on the tier 4 they start with, or if you're playing a faction-based system, which aren't going to be around for very long. So again, this is probably more, the settlement style is more the future, but if you are playing as Rune or Mordor, you will start with Gorbag and Khaldoon. So I want to do some commander builds for those guys coming up in just 1 second. So like I said, it's either Mordor or Rune in terms of starting faction, or the Morgul Orc style, or the Easterling style for settlement style selection, which it seems like is kind of the future where the game's going. So if you're watching this down the road, you might be more familiar with this, but right now we're just in the period of time where these are only in Season 1 servers, but that's kind of the point of this series, is looking at starting commanders you get when you first start the game, or you start a new account, whatever it is, how to best optimize with the commanders they start you with. And Khaldoon and Gorbag are very, very good commanders. Seriously, some of the best tier 1 commanders in the game are the guys we're talking about today. Now, starting out in no particular, we're going to look at Khaldoon. Now, Khaldoon's a fantastic commander who has viability from Respect 5 all the way to Respect 25. As you can see here by the graphic on the screen. By the way, these are all available to access down in the description down below. So if you want to look at this later, if you want to share it wherever, feel free to do so. But Khaldoon is a fantastic commander, and as you can see here, he has viability all the way to Respect 25. That means even with Imparted Wisdom, you can safely take him to Respect 25 and not waste any points, which is very, very good, because not every commander is like that. So Respect 5 is going to be our minimum optimal respect for him, but 25, like I said, being a goal you can go to, and seriously, he reaches crazy potential with high respect. His strengths are going to be evil men troop buffing, and I have commander damage as another strength in there, but you don't reach that until you start getting into higher respects. You see just a little bit of it with the kit we're looking at today, which is R5, but if you push him higher and higher, you're going to start seeing more of a hybrid build for him, which is very, very fun and just makes him very annoying to deal with, regardless of what commanders you have. For ideal troops, we're going to look at Halberdiers, Dragoons, and Corsairs. Now, with a lot of the gear we're going to use, it's going to be best with 100 per command troops. So mounted troops with 50 per command aren't always super ideal. So if you have another option like a half troll, those can be very good. But it's not the end of the world in starting out. If you're in a season 1, it's going to be fantastic. So it's a very kind of easily accessible, kind of equal thirds evil men build for him for troops. Looking at his gear, we have melee might on the cutlass, we have melee vigor on the scale mail, we have melee vigor on the full helm, and we have haste of soldiers on the drums of Moria. Now, as far as the drums of Moria go, you can go with some different effects like Bane of Dwarves, especially in a season 1 if you're RP. Depending on who you fight, you might find something like Bane of Dwarves being more useful. Haste of Soldiers is kind of universally helpful just so your troops go first and do more damage first. But I do find that the effects on the drums are a little underwhelming. It's really just the army attack for melee units that we want to go for on that, which gets up to 3. So you can be flexible on that, but I think I go back and forth, but I think right now I'm liking Haste of Soldiers more for the general use melee builds. Now, as is the case with almost every commander that can wear the Superior Hauberk, depending on the server you're in, fire protection is always a viable option because of the amount of Witch Kings that we see in this game. So bear in mind that this is something you can run and potentially should run depending on who you're fighting, but the scale mail is kind of that universally usable on pretty much every commander in the game. Melee, it's just like that option is a very safe investment. And depending on your pull luck for fire protection, you may not have it, but both are great options for these melee-focused commanders. Really, again, any commander that can run the burn protection probably has a case to run it. That way, if you do hit a Witch King, you don't get destroyed completely. Now on to the skill build. We have here, as you can see on the screen, little numbers by each of the skills. This is the skill order priority, so you know which order to skill these things in. Now, again, at the R5 level, it's not too crucial. But we're going to start out with the R5 Marshal of the East mark. Then we're going to go up to Tribal Tactics, giving your evil men a chance for follow-up, and then down to Quicksand, which is going to have a chance for Sunday round, but a flat 20% increase on damage, which is very, very good. Then 4th, we're going to go into Easterling, followed by Tribal Tactics, and 6th will be Evil Alliance. Now, you'll have 3 points left if you're at Respect 5 with Imparted Wisdom, and you will put those points into Experienced Warrior and Hunt Down. Now, once you start going higher respect with Khaldoon, this is where you start putting a lot of your points, Experienced Warrior, Hunt Down, and Collaboration being maxed out. With a Respect 25 build, that's where you get all of that unlocked and end up having that kind of hybrid commander viability. But right now, at the Respect 5 level, you won't really have a whole lot of that, but it wouldn't take a whole lot to start seeing a difference with Experienced Warrior and Hunt Down, adding more damage that you can do with your troops. So that is the kind of starting skill build for Khaldoon at R5. Now for Khaldoon, his Fang of the East, his R10 unique weapon is going to get a fail from me. It's almost universally accepted that the purple Easterling Spear is almost exactly the same as this, and this is an R10 item. So it's very underwhelming. and not worth investing in. If you want a best in slot weapon, you're going to be running the gigantic hammer with Frenzy, which you're going to obviously be running with Hunt Down to trigger that effect more times. But for the R10, just as a quick overview, it is not worth investing in. Next up is going to be Gorbag. Gorbag is also a fantastic commander, and as you see here on the sheet, his minimum optimal respect is going to be 5, with his maximum also being 25. Just a very good kit that you can't really waste points on. So again, another one, if you're playing with either of these commanders, you can feel safe investing very far with them with your respect, because they are very good and use it very, very well. Now, Gorbag, for his strength, is a troop buffer. Unlike Khaldoon, he doesn't really get any hybrid viability. It is all just about the troops and making your orcs take less and less damage, but also deal kind of ridiculous amounts of damage when everything lines up. So he is a troop buffer, an orc troop buffer through and through. For ideal troops, we have Reapers, Crushers, and Raiders in 50, 30, and 20% increments respectively. You can get pretty creative with this, to be honest. You can also use Arbalists. I like to use the 3 melee troop types because that means they're all sharing the damage, and something like a Sustain Pipe is a little bit more effective with them. And I like to be a little bit heavier on the Reapers and a little bit lighter on the Raiders, but I've seen all kinds of variations. I've seen equal thirds with these troops. I've seen Arbalists in here instead of Raiders. If you have access to different tier 4 troops or different neutral camps with War Drummers, they're seriously, if they are an orc, they can do pretty well on Gorbag. But again, just going for the kind of simple build, if you're in Mordor or wherever you are, you're going to have access to these. It's not neutrals. They're not tier 4s. This is like the most standard build you can run with him that I, again, have had lots of success with. Now for the gear, sort of similar to Khaldoon's, at least with the weapon and armor, we have the melee might cutlass. We have the melee vigor scale mail. Here we have the bone mask with hysteria for the head, and then the accessory is going to be the worn out smoking pipe with sustain. Now a few notes here on the sustain pipe. The reason we're using 3 melee troops here is because all allied units are going to recover HP with sustain, which is modified by focus, which is again very good for Gorbag. So if you have a ranged troop like Arbalist who isn't taking damage, then you're not really healing as much as you could. So your healing output is more with Gorbag with a worn out smoking pipe. Now, there are lots of other options you can use moving forward. People look to use gold weapons like the Drums of Baradur with Might of Soldiers, the Palantir of Orthanc, Tactical Mark, the Signet of the Barrows with the Blitz. There are a lot of great options for him, but just starting out, the pipe is another very safe investment that can be used on so many commanders. So it's a great one for Gorbag, and it also goes well with his R10, which we'll talk about in just a second. The other thing for the Bone Mask, Hysteria is pretty crucial if you start running his Interrogator build, because it is one of the only ways you can actually trigger the madness to effect and line up with his Interrogator build. So that is one thing that isn't super flexible. Again, there are some gold options, but they don't line up as well with Interrogator. So Hysteria Bone Mask is, again, a safe investment, but one that's very needed for him. Now, looking at his skill build, again, you can see the numbers 1 through 7 in terms of which to prioritize. We have the Watchman of Kirith Ungol first, followed by Enrage, and a single point in Corrupting Curse, which is just going to get us a Madness proc, which is very good. Then fourth, we go to Grey Leader in the R3 tree, which is going to reduce the damage the orcs take and give you some extra HP, followed by Orcish Warlord. And then last but not least, we're going to be going into the Interrogator tree. If you're at R5, even with Imparted Wisdom, you're only going to have enough points to put 14 points into Interrogator. So this is one of those things where this is what it'll look like exactly on my screen right here if you're running Gorbag at the R5 level. But as soon as you're able to, if you go to R6, for example, an extra point here gets you more damage from Interrogator and the max level effect, which just modifies the damage a bit. And then from there, you're going to continue putting Respect into Restrain first, which is going to get you a stun, which is also going to help with Interrogator. And then extra points are going to go into Laceration for additional damage. But it doesn't look like this until you get a little bit higher with Respect. Mine's at 15 for reference, but at 5, you're going to almost have Interrogator finished. Now, alternatively for Gorbag, this is where you get into really high Respect conversations, but a lot of people do run the Old Orc and Dress Wounds tree as opposed to Interrogator. So if you are just at that Respect 5 level and want to run a little bit more of a sustaining build, you can do Old Orc and Dress Wounds instead of Interrogator. But I've just found more consistent luck with Interrogator with more damage going out. So again, do your own testing if you like, but my bet here is Interrogator first, followed by Restrain. And then again, if you push them really high, you're going to finish Laceration, and then you're going to go into Old Orc and Dress Wounds anyway. Now, as far as Gorbag's R10, it's one of my favorites in the game. It is the Glaive of Minas Morgul. It's going to get army attack for Orcs and Uruk-hai, but Orcs is all I really care about. And then War Veteran as the effect, which is going to, for Orcs, give them plus 26 defense at full refinement, modified by the commander's focus stat. So one of the issues with the orcs that I have is they're a little bit squishy. The defense isn't quite there with them, but an item that boosts their defense and modified by Gorbag's focus stat makes him very, very good, and also makes something like a sustain pipe that gives you a flat 45 focus very, very good, which is what I have run on Gorbag right now. I have it fully refined. I might consider breaking it down just to try new things, but again, he's been awesome, and I've really, really enjoyed using his R10. So his definitely gets a pass for a usable Arton item, because for the evil side, there's less usable ones than I like. But his is a very fun one that you can invest in over long periods of time. But that is going to do it for our quick reference guide video on Khaldoon and Gorbag. Again, if you're starting in Mordor or Rune, you're going to have these characters. Or if you're in the new settlement style system, starting in these settlements that share the tier 4s as Rune or Mordor. It's a little confusing right now because we're just getting used to this new structure, but hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense soon. And I'll always be updating guides if it needs a change, if they change which commanders you start with or whatever it is, or if builds really change. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future videos like this one. But that'll do it for me this one, and I'll see you guys in a future one.